Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can hear
Okay,
you
good.
loud. I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
okay, yeah.
I
Thank you very much.
apologize for the delay.
No, 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 not at all. It usually happens. So, thank you very much, Dr. Kareem, for taking your precious time for our students, for the youngsters. So, it means a lot to us having some time with you discussing things around technology and particularly AI, and it is going to be beneficial for our students, the professional who are into this field. So my name is Dinar Wali. I'm looking after the digital outreach for Aga Khan Education Board here in Pakistan. And our approach is connecting with top professionals inland and abroad and try to connect them with the youngsters who are aspiring to be in the technology realm or whatever they want to be. So this is one of the initiatives. So we have been following you for quite a long since you have written the book Competing in the Age of AI. I have read that multiple times, probably three, four times, and then trying to internalize the concepts and construct and then trying to build around it and then going to school colleges and talking to kids everywhere in Pakistan so that we can create value. And we are absolutely delighted to have you here in your conversation with our students. For the audience and the students, Dr. Kareem is one of the high quality professional who is at the cutting edge of AI. He is currently professor at Harvard University and he's the chair and co-founder Digital Data and Design Institute at Harvard. And he's been very forthcoming with his writing in peer-reviewed journals, especially on LinkedIn. And I'm following him religiously. So yeah, especially Dr. Kareem and his work with the Wharton professor Ethan Molag. It's quite fascinating for us trying to understand the cutting edge things which are happening in generative AI and then trying to relate them and apply them in our own use cases. So yeah, so I don't want to waste too much of your time. So without any delay, will hand over to you to have your conversation with the audience. So again, thank you very much. And on behalf of the Aga Khan Education Board, I extend my utmost thanks to you for having your time with us. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks, Dinar. I really appreciate the introduction and the opportunity to connect. May I ask, what's the best format? Should I just present for about 20 minutes or 30 minutes and then have a conversation? Is that the best, or do you want to dive right in? What's the best? What do you recommend?
So the presentation first and afterwards Q&A, that would be the best format, if that suits
Great,
you.
great. Oh, absolutely. And by the way, if there's any questions along the way, please use the chat. And I'd love to know where everybody is right now. So I'm in Boston, and the temperature today is 25 Celsius. I'm sure it's hotter where you're at. But please let me know the location of where everybody's coming in from. Um, and so yeah, so just a little bit of my background. So I was born in Karachi in the last century. I know many of you are very young, and I moved to Canada when I was 12. My mother and my sister immigrated to Canada, um, and since that time I've been did my high school there, undergraduate at McMaster University in engineering and management, and then I worked for about 4 years at General Electric in sales and marketing roles and R&D roles, and then was lucky enough to get into MIT. Got a AKEB'P scholarship for my first year at MIT. Then was able to get a RA-ship, so didn't need a scholarship after that. And did my master's there. Then I spent a couple of years working in the Boston Consulting Group here in Boston. And then I was very lucky to find a great advisor and a mentor at MIT, and he convinced me to come back to do my PhD. So I did my PhD at MIT Sloan, basically in management, but basically looking at both economics as well as sociology. And at that time, I was very much interested. This is 2001. I was very interested in open source software and how that all was taking place. And then 2006, I joined HBS as a faculty member after my PhD, and I've been here since that time. It's been a long time since I've come back to Pakistan, unfortunately. Last time I was back was in '99. My whole family has moved out, so my sister lives in Dubai. I've got some second cousins and so forth in Islamabad and so forth, but I haven't been back to my home place in a long time. So I'm hoping, because I just, when you're an assistant professor, you just are heads down working, and so I was lucky enough to get tenure in 2016, but since that time I've been even busier than before. So inshallah, in the next year or so, I'll be able to make a trip over to Pakistan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you, in the next 20-25 minutes, an overview of my thinking process about AI and what's happening with AI. And then we can have a conversation about that. As I'm presenting, if you have questions, just please use the chat. Don't hesitate. And then, of course, we'll have a discussion. Now, I haven't used Google Meet in a long time, so hopefully this will work. Okay. Let's see. All right, I think what it's telling me that I'll have to be able to leave and come back. So give me a second. I'll come rejoin you in just 1 second to give it permission to share my screen. So be right. Okay, I'm back. You guys can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. Now it should work.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And I want to make sure that I have the chat open. Where are you guys? Here. Great. All right, so let's begin. First, just some simple definitions. When most people think about AI, they think about what's known as strong AI, which assumes a level of autonomy and sentience that simply does not exist. A strong AI is about machines that can think and act in a way that matches or surpasses human intelligence. So, what we see in Star Wars and Star Trek and science fiction, that doesn't happen yet. What's happening now today, where all the action is what we know as weak AI, which is a range of algorithms dedicated to solve a particular problem. Sometimes they perform really well compared to humans. Sometimes they perform poorly. And today's world, especially like the modern consumer internet world that we live in, Google, Apple, Facebook, and so on, all those organizations use hundreds, if not thousands, of weak AI algorithms to give us what appear to be sort of these magical types of services. There's a ton of hype on AI, and when you see hype, you can just take a very specific economic perspective on this. And what we've seen is that two things have happened concurrently. One is that the cost to develop with AI has dropped radically. What used to take large teams, lots of people, lots of effort, lots of time, is now becoming available as a service that you can get reasonably cheaply, compared to what it took to build AI systems. So the cost has dropped. And then the second thing that's happened is that demand has exploded because every problem is now being viewed as an AI problem. So we think about dentistry as an AI problem. We think about medicine as an AI problem. We think about driving as an AI problem. All of those have become AI problems. So when you have a sort of a decrease in the cost of supply and also a massive increase in the quality of the supply, at the same time, you have loss of demand. That's why you get all this hype, right? That's why everybody thinks that they should be doing something in AI, whether you're being a startup, whether you're being anything else, that you're very interested in that. And that's what's going on, right? The cost to innovate with AI has declined radically, exponentially almost. And the ways in which people think about where to apply AI has also has exploded as well. And that's what's going on. I'd love for all of you to sort of take this forget about these questions, but on this spectrum from skeptic to cyborg, where are you guys yourselves today in this AI journey that we see ourselves in? So why don't you use a chat and let me know where you fall. Are you a skeptic? Are you an academic? Are you a dabbler? Are you an explorer? Are you a cyborg? Where do you end up yourself? It'd be good to get a perspective on this. So yeah, please use the chat, and there's no wrong answers, right? So we can all learn where we're at. So yeah, please use the chat to tell me where you think you are these days. Okay, there's 30 people here, and I only see like eight things. Okay, nobody's a skeptic. Nobody's a skeptic. Okay, all right. Okay. So let's continue. So I started to think a lot about AI starting in 2010, when the research I was doing on crowdsourcing led me to run field experiments, and then that led me to work with NASA to solve some of their complex algorithmic problems. And starting in 2010, 11, 12, we started to see in our contests early machine learning code show up. And that was quite surprising. And then in my teaching obligations here at the school, we were writing case studies about companies that were sort of, digital first, AI first, like a Uber, like a Facebook, and so on and so forth, and Google. And we started to see that a new form of company architecture was emerging. And so this book that came out in 2020, but the research really, the writing process started in 2016. Marco is a faculty member here at HBS. He's also one of my mentors. We started to try to write the book in 2016. We failed several times. But as we were working on the book, what we sort of came up with is this framework, which is to say that AI and digital platforms are changing the business architecture, how a company creates value, how a company captures value, but also importantly, how you serve lots of customers, how you achieve scope with them, how you give them many different products, and how you keep learning. And what we saw was that the traditional bottlenecks of human-centered processes were being changed because you could put data and AI in the middle of these organizations, and that would have a big effect. So when we were writing this book, we talked about, as Dinar will know, this notion of the next Rembrandt. The next Rembrandt was a project that Microsoft did with TU Delft in the Netherlands, and ING Bank and the Rembrandt Museum, to basically take every single image that Rembrandt had ever painted, every single portrait, and then use that to then create a brand new portrait that has never existed before, but that was in the classical Rembrandt style. And this is what they created. This took several months of effort, several millions of dollars, several people to go do this. And my experience with this was that I showed this portrait at a conference in Australia, and I raised this is in 2017. I put this up and I said, who painted this portrait? And the gentleman in the back raised their hand. He said, "Oh, that's an early Rembrandt." I said, "Sir, how do you know?" He said, "Oh, look at the tilt of the hat, the way the shoulder is, the way the eyes are looking at you, what he's wearing. That's an early Rembrandt. He said, I've never seen this before, but this looks like an early Rembrandt. And then I said, sir, how do you know that? But he said, oh, I did my PhD on Rembrandt, and I'm the director of the Australian Portrait Gallery. And so he's an expert. And then I showed him a video about how this was all done through machine learning, and this is an AI generated video and a portrait, and he was quite stunned. When this came out, we saw two responses: a set of people that thought this was incredible, and then a set of people that actually said this is the worst thing ever. And this bimodal response of people loving it and also other people hating it is what I expect we will all be facing as more and more AI gets involved in our workplace. Because what's going to happen is that AI is now starting to do things that humans, we thought was the exclusive domain of humans, like creativity, like problem solving, and so on and so forth. And now that it's doing this, it becomes very difficult for us to understand what this means for us to be humans and to have an identity that we have something special to offer when the machines can do so much more. And this challenge that we sort of saw in 2016, 2017 is going to come back in all domains. So this is 2016, okay? So again, just remember, lots of people, lots of money, lots of time to create this one portrait. You know, I've dedicated my book to the women in my family, so it's to my mother, to my wife, and to my daughter. And you know, my mother has tried. My mom now lives in Toronto. She comes to Karachi quite a bit, but you know, she's tried reading my book, and you know, she goes that, you know, Karim, your book is very much a good insomnia medicine. When I can't fall asleep, I start reading the book, and then it's so boring I fall asleep. Like, what does AI have to do with anything that I care about? And so I asked her recently, I said, Mom, you know, who's your favorite actor? And of course she said Shah Rukh Khan. So I went into Midjourney and I said, Shah Rukh Khan as imagined by Rembrandt. So Midjourney is this generative AI tool that enables us to create any image that we want. I subscribe to it for $20 a month. And then I put that prompt in, and that's what I got.
Wow.
Right. So in you know, it's a pretty good representation of Shah Rukh Khan. And what's interesting is that in 8 years' time, right, what was a massive project now is available to me for $20 a month. Right. And that's the exponential decrease in cost and the exponential increase in quality that we're sort of seeing come true. Okay. Now this is cute and funny. Here's another one. You know, my wife is a psychologist, but she's making a career transition into the arts. So she was spending about a year in New York. So I was going to New York quite a bit. And so I asked Midjourney to say, like, Shah Rukh Khan as a Brooklyn hipster, right? So then it also put Shah Rukh Khan as a Brooklyn hipster in a dive bar as well, with the right tattoos and look, with the beard and all that kind of stuff. So you know, I mean, again, $20 a month, unlimited number of images that you can create. And so this is what happened, right? Like in 8 years' time, what we see is an incredible increase in performance, incredible decrease in cost. And this is like a cute thing, but imagine any company that wants to do marketing now, right? You would now have to rethink your marketing processes because your images are now basically becoming unlimited and free and fully personalized along the way. And so, yes, Dinar.
So I think this is just a zero-shot prompt.
Yes.
Yep. So
Exactly. That's it.
fascinating.
And so the thing, and to sort of put this into context, is I'd recommend a book by Azim Azhar. This book called The Exponential Age is really good. Ashok, good question. At the moment, the U.S. Copyright Office says that anything generated by AI is not copyrightable. And so this becomes an issue, but I think the trade-off is the cost and the speed. Like, you know, when I see companies foolishly trying to copyright everything and they think they have all this IP, But what matters in most organizations is speed to market, and being able to personalize your brand and your experiences to customers. And so look, I think I spent about a decade's worth of litigation about copyright and training models and so forth in the U.S. But the point is that I think these tools are here now, and many of us will start using them. This book by this book, again, I highly recommend, which puts into context what happens when the performance of technologies grows exponentially, and the rest of us only go linearly. Azim's book, and he's got a great podcast as well. I highly recommend that podcast as well for you to look at. And so anyway, this explanation tells us why we're seeing this. That basically we are now in this exponential age where every one increment in effort leads to a doubling of performance. And if that is what's going on, or some radical increase in performance, if that's going on, then we're in time for a wild ride for all of us. To put everything in perspective, there's been 4 waves of AI. Cybernetics, expert systems, then the machine learning era, and now this generative AI systems. And what has happened in the last 2 waves, which is very interesting, is that the time from laboratory discovery to acute application and to industrial application has shrunk rapidly. So Masood, I think your question is good. One is that underneath all these systems is a statistical model. So it's a probabilistic model, so you'll never exactly get everything you want. But at the same time, many of these companies are working to create sort of constancy, right? So if you have a logo that you want placed inside of an ad consistently, the Coke logo being changed every single time won't work. So now there's work to sort of keep some things consistent and some characters and logos and brands consistent, but then still allow for the generative aspect of these things. Again, these are all, the way to think about them is that these models that you have today, if you believe this world, these models today are the worst models you will encounter. These models today are the worst models you'll encounter, and if you expect that exponential increase in performance, they'll just keep getting better and better and better. Just give it some time along the way. So the generative AI systems is where the action is. And again, to sort of show this is my friend Armin McCrochin at Flagship Pioneering. We took his portrait, we put it through Stability AI, and then all of a sudden you can create all these avatars. The same models that create these funny avatars can be used to generate brand new proteins for drug discovery that have not existed in the body before. Same technology. It's a much harder problem to solve, but the same approach. The AlphaGo challenge it was based on reinforcement learning. That is being used for drug discovery. And there's drugs in the FDA process right now that have these that have been discovered by reinforcement learning. And then even these large language models that we use all the time, they're being used to optimize chemistry, for example. How does generative AI work, right? Well, it's fairly simple, right? It's a statistical model that predicts the next word. That's all it's doing, right? There's no sentience, there's no consciousness. It's lots of data, which is the entire internet, right? They've scraped up the entire internet. They have a new architecture in algorithms. And also lots of compute, right? The combinations of architecture and algorithms, data, and compute is what's driving all this performance gains. But in the end, all the system is doing is predicting the next word or the next pixel. That's all it's doing. And the reason why these models took off so well is because what OpenAI figured out is that you needed some human quality control on the outputs. So they put into play reinforcement learning human feedback, and that basically allowed them to drive performance in an incredible way. And what you see is remarkable results in terms of the percentile performance in the exam results, right? So if you look at the right, GPT-4 is as better than 90% of lawyers that have taken the bar exam. GPT-4 on GRE qualitative, it's at 99%. Unbelievable, right? Better than 99% of students coming through. Even like medicine, right? It's more accurate than physicians and has more empathy than physicians as well, as rated by humans, right? So it's, again, we're in this very interesting world. Generative AI capabilities continue to expand exponentially. You know, ChatGPT upgrades have shown you, more creative, easier to prompt, fewer hallucinations, and so on and so forth. It's got multimodal. You can have text, images, video, and even how we search. We're used to searching on Google. Now there's tools like Perplexity and Elicit that change the search model that we've sort of seen as well. And there's a massive infrastructure underneath all of this, right? I mean, what you often see is this sort of these full stack large language models, but underneath is a big infrastructure, and then now much of these are being absorbed into consumer uses, industry applications, enterprise applications, and so on and so forth along the way. To put this all into perspective, I want us to connect it to what's been happening historically over the last 30 years. So the first web browser, this is the image of the first web browser, is the Mosaic web browser. What the first web browser did is that it lowered the cost of information transmission. And that's what basically drove the internet. Now just think about today. Today, there are 31 of us here on this call, okay? And most of you are in Pakistan, I'm here in Boston. For us to have this high fidelity two-way conversation 30 years ago would have cost us close to $50,000 a minute, if not more, because each one of us would need a camera operator, a sound person, and a satellite uplink to be able to have this discussion in this way, right? And I think $50,000 per minute is probably like an underestimate of having this, right? We could not have this. But what the consumerification of the internet did is that it lowered the marginal cost of information transmission to almost zero now, that we can have this discussion, right? In just 30 years. Many of you are probably less than 30 years old, but in your lifetimes, what will cost us more than $50,000 a minute for us to do this is now available to us for free. It's remarkable, right? And so when you have this sort of shift in the cost of information transmission and everybody became an information provider, right? We saw new business models emerge. Google and Baidu, because then they said, oh, search is a problem. Search is a bottleneck. How do we find the right information becomes a bottleneck. And that's what came through. There's Napster in the last century, and Napster lowered the cost of music transmission and acquisition. And then we have iTunes and Spotify. We've gone from buying records to subscribing to unlimited music, right? The cost of music acquisition has gone down radically, and then we have these new business models. The iPhone basically did two things. It lowered the cost of software distribution, right? And also allowed anybody to become a software developer. So you could be in Multan or Mogadishu or Montreal and be a software developer, right? And that has given us this wonderful world of TikTok. And so the question I ask is, what is ChatGPT? What is OpenAI? What is generative AI lowering the cost of? And what new business models are emerging? What I would say is that we don't know yet what the new business models are, but what we do know is that that the cost of, what my claim is that the cost of cognition, the cost of thinking, the cost of problem solving, the cost of expertise is going to zero with these tools. And if that is true, then we're again in for some very interesting times for all of us. So the way I think about this is that you imagine any skill, any kind of a job, any kind of a role, there's always going to be a normal distribution of performance. Some people will be really good, some people will be average, some people will be below average. Now, what happens when all of us get access to tools that lower the cost of cognition, lower the cost of expertise? Okay. What we expect to happen is that the distribution will shift to the right. So the green distribution is the original distribution, right? The orange distribution is now what the AI is at. And so the distribution will shift to the right. It'll probably get narrower as well because you have less variance. And then the left tail below the average is probably going to get cut off, because if you know how to use the AI effectively, then you'll be at the average of the AI, right? Which is kind of remarkable. So nurses could become as good as doctors. Paralegals could become as good as lawyers if you know how to use these AI tools effectively. And what we expect in the labor market is replacement effects. Jobs will go away. Augmentation. Jobs will have new capabilities. You'll all have these new superpowers, and transformation. New jobs will be created that we haven't seen before. And this has been the history of technological change throughout. So at the institute that I'm lucky enough to co-found and lead, what we see are some studies that I'll show you. Some of them are mine, some of them are my colleagues, which sort of put this into perspective. So this is the paper that I did with Ethan and colleagues at MIT and also at the University of Warwick in collaboration with the Boston Consulting Group. And what we did is we wanted to understand what happens when people get access to GPT in professional work. And we studied very carefully what consultants at BCG did in the early days of their career, and we noticed that there were two types of tasks: creative tasks and analytical tasks. And all consultants had to be good at both. When we applied the AI to those tasks, what we discovered is that the AI was good at the creative tasks, what we call inside the frontier, but AI was not good at analytical tasks at that time. And that led us to then run this as an experiment. So we have 758 consultants. And what we see, and what we do is we randomly put them into two arms, one doing the creative task, one doing the performance, the analytical task, and then we then again randomize them into those with GPT and those without GPT. Now, note, I'm running this as a drug study, right? As a drug trial, because we want to get causal inference about the effect of these things. So you always need a control group that is not treated, and then a treated group that has all the treatments, and then you can compare them doing the same task. Here's what we discovered. The first three columns are about the inside the frontier task. BCG consultants, remember these are from elite schools around the world. Half of them have MBAs, a quarter of them have PhDs, a quarter of them have elite bachelor's degrees. They're faster, they're 25% faster, and they get more tasks done compared to those without AI. The quality of the AI output is ranked 40% higher than those without AI, 40% higher. And then consultants below average improved by 43%, and consultants above average improved by 17%. Okay, so that's the thing I was sort of showing you. But for the task where the AI was not good at, performance dropped by 19%. Okay, and here you can see this coming through, right? There's a right shift in the distribution. The blue is the inside the frontier task. The blue is the control group. The green and the red are the treated groups, and you see the shift in the creative task. And then what you see on the analytical task is the opposite, right? Those without AI do better than those with AI. And so that's the dilemma we're in now. Like, yeah, it's good at some things, not good at other things, but when it's good at things, it's really good. And we need to figure out how I'm going to skip this slide. The last thing we sort of saw was that that there were three ways of working. There were folks that were centaurs. They divided their work equally between AI and themselves. There were cyborgs, those that worked completely with the AI, and what we call self-automators. You know, they were on the beach, and the AI do everything for them. These are the proportions of folks that we sort of saw emerge. Another paper that is just coming out in organization science is with my postdoc, Jackie Lane. We were interested in understanding how you could create new business ideas for the circular economy. We have a human crowd of work doing this, and also prompt-based GPT-4 crowd doing this work. And we look at creativity. What we discover is that sort of humans generate more novel ideas, okay, compared to AI. But AI generates more valuable ideas that have more commercial potential. Okay, and so again, that's the combination that we want to be thinking about, right? Novelty versus commercialization. And humans can inspire novelty, okay? But AI drives value, okay? The cost, though, is quite remarkably different, right? in our crowdsourcing experiment, there's about 2,500 hours of effort done, and we spent about $2,500 on various platforms and prizes. For AI, we had $27 of GPU usage and 5.5 hours, right? So you can imagine now. So now if you're an entrepreneur or if you're in business, right, you should be thinking about how do I deploy AI today in my work? Right? What do I need to do today in my work to make this happen? Because if this is an advantage you can have, you can have novel ideas, but you can have more valuable ideas too. Then you set yourself apart. My colleague Ayelet Israeli has shown that you can use GPT for market research. She's found that GPT is price sensitive, has reference price issues, has brand preferences. And it's quite remarkable what it can do. My colleague Rem Koning has done a study that has shown that he put GPT, a bot, inside of WhatsApp, and then ran an experiment with Kenyan entrepreneurs, small and medium entrepreneurs in Kenya. And what he discovered was the following: the overall effect of GPT on the Kenyan entrepreneurs was zero, was null. But when you separate out the high-performing entrepreneurs and low-performing entrepreneurs initially before they joined, what he discovered is that those using GPT increased their revenue by 20%. They were getting business advice. I'm a dairy farmer. I'm trying to understand what to do with my cows and with my land and so on and so forth. Those folks that were already good farmers increased their revenues by 20%. Those that were poor farmers decreased their revenue by 11% by using GPT-4. And the reason why is that there was different questions being asked, right? So how you prompt, what you prompt, your underlying expertise matters here as well. We've seen, again, one more thing, large language models for programmers, remarkable capability, right? Faster, higher satisfaction, better than manual coding, more productivity, and so on and so forth, and some issues as well. One study that I'm about to publish shows us also in the world of science that the use of AI in science itself, in the creation of knowledge, has, since 1998, has increased by about between 2.5-fold to 8-fold in the last 30 years. So lots of disciplines are being impacted by all of this. And the last thing I'm going to sort of show you and then stop is that, again, AI is now lowering the cost or increasing the cost of expertise. Okay, it's lowering the cost of cognition, problem solving, creativity. And just to put this all into perspective, I did a big experiment with a large consumer products goods company, and I was showing them some capabilities. So we were going to take sort of this multimodal image generation aspect of ChatGPT. So what I did is I said, okay, let me show you. So what you're seeing now is a drawing I did by hand of a laundry machine, a teenager, pods, and clothes, right? You see that on the top left. Then I took a snapshot of that, I put it in ChatGPT, and I said, can you draw me an image? So it drew me this image on the bottom left. Then I said, oh, you forgot the pods for the detergent. Can you please put that in? So then it added the pods. It went a bit crazy. I said, can you make the image with the middle-aged South Asian man? So it drew this nice image of South Asian man. And then I said, can you take this image on the top left and just write me a prompt? And then I'll put the prompt in. So it did that. Okay. So that this is the image on the left, and then you can see the larger prompt there. And then I said, can you also make him bald with a beard, right, to represent me? So it did that as well. Now note that, you know, in this whole thing, it's pretty fast. It's taking me like, you know, 3 minutes. Note that, you know, it created a very good-looking man on the bottom right, with a six-pack. There aren't too many middle-aged South Asian men that I know, at least in my circle of friends, that have six-packs. Right, all of us have, you know, jowl bellies and so forth. This is always trying to like make you look good and so forth. But this is what I'm trying to say. Like, I have zero skills in arts, right, and now I can do all this at scale. So with that, I'm going to stop, and then we can have a conversation together.
Yeah, that was quite fascinating. So, audience, you can come off mic and you can ask question directly, or you can put your question in the chat box, whatever is feasible for you.
So Sarfraz asking a very good question, which is like, what do you think about the reasoning capabilities? There are no reasoning capabilities right now in these models because they're just statistical models, right? And so whatever reasoning, I mean, they'll give you explanations, but I would not 100% believe those explanations. I would like test them. This is where the, this is like at the moment an outside the frontier task for large language models. But will it get better? Of course, it'll get better. Mohammed asked about the difference between novelty and value. Actually, in the academic literature, there's a big differentiation. Novelty is just like it's a brand new idea. Value is what consumers pay for it. Consumers don't always pay for new ideas, and so we tested both of those in this. Mohammed Faizan is asking a good question. Also, like, can we really achieve strong AI? So I'll link for you guys a paper that is making the waves. Let me just, it's called Situational Awareness. It's a 180-page paper. Now, if you care about AI, like I do, hang on, let me find the paper first on the website. There we go. No, there we go. If you care about AI, then I would recommend is that you read it. Wait, no, I don't want to do that. Yeah. Let's see. You should read this paper, and even if Leopold is 10% right, it's going to be quite interesting. So he's predicting that some level of AGI by 2027. And so, yeah. Hassan is asking, doesn't novelty bring more value to power? No, not necessarily. Academic research has shown that there's inverse U relationship. Some novelty is useful, but then too much novelty leads to drop off as well. Once the paper is out, I'll post it on LinkedIn, and you'll see all the details behind it. In fact, the paper is actually, it might be on SSRN. Let me just see. Yeah. You can also ask me by, by just speaking up as well. I'm happy to answer chat questions.
Yeah. So Yahya, you want to speak? So please.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. First of all, a very great session, to be honest. Really amazing to be part of this session as well. I've been recently been working in AI. It's going to be a couple of months, and understanding that one thing that has been popping up in mind is the tuning in AI, the fine tuning, the concept of fine tuning in AI. So how fine the fine tuning should be in an AI and in an LLM model, and what is considered to be an effective model? Does it level depends upon the domain, or what are the levels of fine tuning? Just need to understand that.
Great question. I think it's very much domain specific, right? Like in medicine, you might do a ton of fine tuning because you can't afford the cost of the false positives or the false negatives. In other situations, you may actually be fine with less fine tuning, depending. So I think it's like the way I would think. I've been thinking about this. There's a concept of a confusion matrix in statistics and computer science, which basically looks at false positives and false negatives, right? And then, so you should understand what is the ratio of false positives and the ratio of false negatives. In computer science, we often say it's like sensitivity and specificity of a model, but more generally, just think, type 1 versus type 2 error. And then say, what is the cost if a type 1 error is made or type 2 error is made? Cost writ large, right? And then say, what am I able to tolerate? And the only thing I would add to this is that we often imagine that these systems need to be better than humans. But I often say, well, what is my counterfactual? How good are the humans in the same task? And do we have metrics for them? And then you can make a decision. Should the AI be better than humans? Should the AI be equivalent to humans? Are you okay with AI being less than humans? Right? So what I would say is understand the cost of the false positives and the false negatives that the AI will give you. Understand what the counterfactual is with humans, and then make a strategic choice about, how much do you want to tolerate one versus the other.
Yeah. Umar, please go ahead.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, hello, sir. Umar here. So when you talked about exponential age and the fourth wave, right? Like we are now at the stage of fourth wave. So I think I see things in a parallel perspective, right? At this stage, we are utilizing the generative AI and the current AI tools and techniques, right? And there's a lot of stuff going on. And I'm talking in perspective of a growing company. Like we started back almost a year back. So we're doing a lot of things. We're competing with the market. Everybody seems to be doing the same things, except the big fishes like the big Meta,
Yes.
Facebook, and Google, Apple. So we can't compete with them. But what we can do is anticipate the next moves for the let's say next 5 to 10 years, right? And in parallel, we are competing with the world. We are building chatbots and virtual assistants, audio tools, uh, and working with LLMs. So how do you propose a strategy for a growing startup, I would say, so we can anticipate the next moves and plan ahead of time? Because at this time, there's a lot of, you could say, saturation, but we are learning and implementing. But I think we would also like to have a foresight into the future. How do
Yeah.
we anticipate that?
I think it's really difficult to have a foresight in the future. What you can imagine, what I would sort of say is in the next 5 years, the models will get better, and the models will have more and more performance. And but the way I would think about that is that, and I recommend you watch some videos about Sam Altman talking about startups and how startups should be responding in this wave of AI. There's a great set of video series on YouTube. It's called, I think, Sequoia, which is a venture capital firm in the US. Did a great set of, they had an AI day. They put all those videos online. It's great. I would highly recommend all entrepreneurs that are here that want to do startups to watch those videos. It's about 8 hours of videos. I'd watch all of them. Put it on 2x speed and just watch all of them to learn. I always watch all the videos at 2x, right? Like you look to learn more faster. The thing I would sort of say is it's really hard to anticipate. But there is a massive last mile issue between the capabilities of these models and their implementation in the real world. And I think that's where startups can do a lot. So I would do two things. I would sort of reimagine your startup as a completely native Gen AI company. Is your programming done with Gen AI? Is your marketing done with Gen AI? Are all your processes rethought with Gen AI at the core? That's the first thing. So you just become a much more efficient, much better firm. We have data, for example, I'm spending some time with Grab in Southeast Asia, in Singapore and in Malaysia, right? Grab sends 10,000 promotional messages per month on their app, for their ride sharing and their food delivery system. Right now, it takes them about 100 hours from the idea for a message to it being implemented. About 10 hours is back and forth activity time, and the 90 hours is just wait time. They got to reduce down to 1.5 hours. And they can do full translation. You want, English, Filipino, Thai, Cambodian, you can do all that. But even like local dialects, you want Singlish, you want Taglish, whatever, you can get all that. So what I would say is that I think for your company, you should say, this is the way for us to organize ourselves. How will we do marketing, product development, research, every single aspect of the company function? How would you do it with generative AI in the core and reimagine all the activities? Then you should say, like, what is your value proposition to your customers? And I see a lot of value in the last mile effort. How will companies in Pakistan, if you're serving the Pakistani market, get benefit from it? And what can you provide them that enables them to take advantage of these tools and capabilities? The last mile problem is massive.
Akib, please go ahead.
Sure. Akib here. My question somewhat relates to Umar's question, basically, but I believe we can have a different perspective on that as well. So, considering the rapid advancements in this field, right? What do you think are the primary expectations of stakeholders? Are they looking for groundbreaking applications from developers, or is there a strong emphasis on achieving higher levels of accuracy or efficiency? Let me relate it to an event of dot-com bubble, where everyone was just storming in on the presence of the websites itself. no one was paying attention to the applications or the use of it. So how do you see this scenario?
I think it's just going to be case by case. I think it's going to be very much context dependent, industry dependent case. It's hard to make global pronunciations of what this will look like and so forth, because what's happened is that many of these models are open source, and what we're seeing is an explosion, what we call in economics recombinant innovation. People are taking ideas from here and there, remixing them, coming up with something brand new. And so the biggest thing I would say is, for those of you that are entrepreneurs, those that are running businesses, is focus in on your value creation. Like what value are you trying to create with these AI tools? Right? Like really, like why would a customer come to you and work with you? Like, and don't just say because I've got AI. Like what problem of a customer are you really solving? Be that specific. In my book, we sort of go through this logic. Like you have to be focused on value creation, and then you think about value capture. How will I make money from the value that I'm created? And then think about how will AI help me both on value creation and value capture. And then the rest is noise. And there's been lots of people that go find the customers, deliver value, right, and come through. And then the rest is just it's hard to sort of be in this current era. It's kind of like what I say is this current era is like 1908, right, when the Ford Model T car has been developed, right? It has just come out of the factory. You can only get it in one color. But the roads aren't built, the mechanics aren't there, we don't have seat belts, we don't have headlights, we don't have anything, right? And so what's happening is that these tools are coming out of the lab and getting commercialized. But we're in the first generation of these tools, and there's a ton of value creation to be done here because they're general purpose tools. They're no longer like the car just did transportation. If you believe my argument, this is about cognition and expertise, then this is across the economy, across the society. Mm-hmm. And so then it becomes very interesting to start to say, okay, what does this all mean for us, and how do we make sense of it?
Faizan, please, but be very specific because we are running short.
Yeah, and I'll have to leave in like about 5 minutes because I've got to get to a campus and so.
Just. Please.
Sure. I'll try to make it short. Basically, my question is about the accountability and responsibility related to the AI. Because if we start integrating AI into all of our processes, like for example, in real life, if a human does an error, he is held responsible, right? But the way you give the example of nurses can become better than doctors. So in those critical environments, in those critical systems, if an AI makes an error or a mistake, so who should be held responsible for that?
Yeah, great question. I think we're gonna see. Hang on one second. I just got to get something out to people. Okay. I think the question of liability is a very interesting one. At the moment, at least in the U.S., right, we just sue everybody. Everybody goes to court, and you make sense of it. So my thought is that two things will happen. That there will be lots of litigation around mistakes being made, but doctors make mistakes too, and so forth, and then we have ways to solve for that. And so I expect that this is going to happen. So for example, I'm an early investor on the board of this company called Vidya Health that does dental diagnosis with AI. We're right now in about 10,000 dental offices around the US. We have 30 algorithms approved by the FDA for diagnosis, right? But we have insurance. And the thing is that the ultimate decision to accept or decline the AI's recommendation is up to the dentist, right? Not to us, right? We don't make the recommendation. We give a X and Y, and then the dentist decides. So I think that's gonna happen over time. I think the bigger thing, what I would sort of say is that and this connects back to Ali Zain's question as well, which I want to answer, which is, I don't think we can slow this down, to be quite honest. And all technologies have great benefit and great costs. You think about automobiles, right? Massive increase in mobility, right? At the same time, pollution, right? And the oil industry, right? Deepfakes are going to be true. We as a society will need to get used to the fact that you need a different mechanism to assess the truth in the media, right? But at the same time, if all of a sudden we have made expertise available to everybody, I can provide McKinsey level advice to Pakistani entrepreneurs through a chatbot. Wouldn't that be amazing? Right now, this is unaffordable. And so what I would say is that I think we need to sort of balance the massive benefits that this technology offers with the costs. But I don't think it's going to be easy for us to slow this down at all. And we as humans will have to adapt. That's why this is a very critical time for us, that we need to learn how to adapt along the way. I'll tell you, like, I'm in the next month or two, I'm going to have a prompt engineering course out on YouTube with my colleague Azim. And so we shot a bunch of videos together, but then we have to show you a bunch of prompts. And I have zero time. So what my team did is they've created an avatar of me, right, that is going to do all the talking, right? And that would walk people through the prompts and that kind of stuff. Well, this is incredible, right? Now I don't have to worry about it, right? I trust my team. They've got my recording. They can do all these things. And so I think that's the great part. And so what I'd encourage all of you to do is say, for developing countries, this is a massive opportunity. If you believe my point, that the cost of expertise is going to zero, this is a massive point, right? Because we can start to deploy them and rethink our infrastructure, rethink how we serve people, rethink how we create value at scale. You don't have the large scale legacy systems that we have here in the US and in the West.
Yeah. So last question, Karim, is this is the question. Let me ask it because I'm into this sphere. So what we are doing, we are into kind of geospatial foundation model. So the province where I belong to, what we are doing at the government level is forest density in terms of land per capita is the highest in this province. We have around 1.17 mega hectare area covered by forest. But we want to measure how much each plant is taking, sequestering carbon from the atmosphere and taking it to the land. So I haven't come across a good solid geospatial foundation model where I can use the data by mapping it, like using the satellite imagery of Planet Lab and then putting using the algorithm, maybe the IBM geospatial model, and then compute the carbon sequestration potential. What would you suggest? How we go about it?
I mean, it depends on like how narrow the use case is. If the narrow is just about plant-based sequestration, then you might just be better off the prediction model that this has a bunch of data, like your traditional ML model. If you feel like there's a lot more to be done, then you might start to work towards what we call sort of SLMs, sort of specialized language models, before you get to the foundation. So I would say utilize the foundation models to help you get some stuff done, but I would actually like use them as a foundation to then go specialize instead of trying to create everything from scratch.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Kareem, for your time and all the audience. It was fascinating listening to you, and